so Kuma punches a guy in this one. In case you're new, this video is in a series where I break down the paneling of each new One Piece chapter, picking whichever pages have the most interesting things about them. We start this chapter returning to Kuma's punch from last time, with a standard right-to-left flow that aligns with the direction his fist will be moving in. Last time we saw this, the camera angles didn't actually have any directional flow, because the punch wasn't in that chapter. That meant it could put the focus on Saturn's reaction. This time, the punch is happening, so it focuses on setting up the motion itself with this panel. Before that though, we delve into memory. I like how the imagery of Kuma's past contrasts the present. He was small then compared to his father, and looked down upon by Saturn, but now he's standing tall against him. The sequence of flashbacks moves from Saturn to more important things, the people Kuma lost and cares about. It's not about Saturn, it's about them. And the transition from Bonnie crying as a baby to Bonnie crying as a 12-year-old smoothly brings us back to the present. There's not a ton to say about this page at first, but the reaction shots do cleverly remind us that Sanji, Frankie, and Vegapunk are all here, as they're the three who are going to do things later in the chapter. But the final panel stands out. The harsh, warped perspective and the subtle perpendicular lines that align with that warping give it an insane sense of speed, like our vision isn't keeping up with what's happening. The eye travels diagonally down from the panel above and keeps being directed by Kuma's teeth, in exactly the direction the fist is flying in. Before he was just winding up, but now we feel his punch moving. At this camera angle, his fist might feel a little too small, so we emphasize its power some more with some circular compositions. And there we go, big punch. We love to see it. Kuma's fist is square and rigid, while Saturn's face is smushed, bending around it, showing the power behind Kuma's punch, that it can impose a new shape on Saturn's face. The tight panel of Saturn trying to resist, and failing, is a great example of how non-linear time works in manga. An anime adaptation of this kind of moment has to make a choice between making it blink and you'll miss it fast, or making it last a few seconds so we can see the art and fill more episode time. The One Piece anime has, many times, chosen to slow down this kind of moment, ruining the sense of speed. But in manga, you can make it feel fast with a tight panel while still allowing the reader to slow down if they want to. Things don't need to read fast to feel fast. The same thing applies to the larger panel. Linger on a shot like this in anime and you ruin the speed, but we're free to take it in for as long as we want in manga. And none of this is to say that the anime can't do a fantastic job of showing this punch if it wants to. It's animated after all, but it just uses different tools than manga can use, and any adaptation has to take that into account. So what makes this punch feel so strong? There's a lot going into it. The entire sequence flows from right to left, from initial contact to Saturn flying back. It makes it feel as though as our eye is moving left, Saturn is moving with it. The elements of the punch are clearly distinguishable with three oval shapes: Kuma, the punch itself, and Saturn. It gives it a satisfying beat-to-beat rhythm, and makes it so a page with one character overlapping another is still easy to make out. Kuma's oval shape also, like last chapter, implies power and sturdiness. Most One Piece characters don't have arms quite that thick, and thus can't fill out as powerful as a shape. It's like Saturn isn't being punched, but is being hit by a boulder. One of the simplest but most important reasons this page works is the progression from smaller panels to a large one. That gives it a feeling of release, of tension exploding and expanding outward as Saturn bursts away from the impact. It wouldn't feel that way if this was just one big panel. Just as important as the impact itself is the result. Saturn doesn't just get knocked back, but flies through a row of buildings. I like that he doesn't just pierce a hole in them, but actually causes them to collapse, giving a greater sense of impact that's more interesting to show visually. It even gives an arrow-like composition to the panel. The shot of the buildings falling down on top of him also gets a nice follow-up with the distant shot that implies they all landed on him, leaving it ambiguous how hurt he is. It actually ties the whole chapter together that this happens, as it gives the protagonists a moment of safety to reunite and talk, before he returns to threaten them again. Few stories blend narrative with physical choreography like One Piece does. But for a small criticism, I think this sequence is repetitive. The two rows repeat their panel structure, and the Saturn close-ups are too similar. as well as too narrow to tell what changed between them or at what point he stopped moving. It would read better with a little more variation in camera angle and panel shape, and if it found a way to show us clearly exactly when Saturn reached a stop. We get more action when Saturn is back, attacking Kuma from behind. I love the choice of camera angles here. It totally flips perspective, from with Saturn to against him, but cleverly keeps the claw pointing in the same direction in both shots. This makes it so we don't get confused trying to reorient ourselves between the two panels, and makes it feel like the claw is moving downward toward Kuma across the page. The second camera angle then also allows us to have Sanji come in moving from right to left to knock the claw to the side, while also forming a great line for the eye to follow into the panel. Simple but effective choreography that's easy to follow from the art alone. It's Franky's turn, and both his and Kizaru's lasers have great right-to-left flow, as well as good camera angle choices, but we'll get to that in a minute. You can convey a lot in manga through which direction characters are facing, and what's behind them. This is something I talked about a lot in my analysis of Luffy vs. Buggy. Go check that out after this. Kizaru is fast enough to appear behind Franky and surprise him, and gives the page a sort of big fish eaten by bigger fish progression. Franky's laser is composed with him in the background and the laser in the foreground. This was chosen because the emphasis is on the damage done to Saturn, so we can see it heal later. But if we used this same composition when Kizaru attacks, the page would feel less dynamic, so that's why we switched to having the attacker in the foreground, which also emphasizes Kizaru's power as being greater than Franky's. The final page of the chapter makes for a payoff a long time coming. We have been constantly reinforcing the imagery of marine ships surrounding the island. We see them every time we cut to Egghead from somewhere else. Now we see that they weren't just set dressing, they were being shown because they were going to do something, a buster call. The triangular composition of the panel is great to look at and helps the imagery tie into what's happening. Punk Records is like the peak of a mountain behind clouds. It's under assault, but it towers with the might of Vegapunk's scientific accomplishments, while the ships, filling out the base of the triangle with the full width of the panel, are emphasized for the size of their fleet, which is how the world government exerts power. The marine ships are cut off by the edges of the panels, a subtle trick that makes it feel like there's more we aren't seeing, instead of like these ships that are in the frame are all that they've got. Personally, I am excited to see where the arc goes from here, now that it's following up on thematic threads not just from Sabaody, but more and more from Enies Lobby as well. This is practically a climax, though not the final one, of what the Straw Hats' interactions with the world government are going to look like. So last week I thanked you all for getting me to 1,000 subscribers. You guys really liked that last video and shot me all the way up past 1,600 already. Thank you guys so much for enjoying the videos, and let's keep it going. Subscribe, like, comment, you know the drill. Next week we're going to cover chapter 1105. I'll see ya.